Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. I was thinking recently in my air puppet brain about an interesting topic, and that will be the points of my discussion for tonight. What exactly have we learned after 8 years of Donald Trump in the U.S. presidential limelight? Allow me to divulge. The now infamous elevator, the one Donald and Melania rode down in at Trump Tower, whereby he officially threw his symbolic hat into the ring for President of the United States of America. Immediately it began. What began? The illness now known widely as Trump derangement syndrome, or simply TDS. What was our first lesson? That Barry Soetoro and Hillary Clinton are first-class felons, along with John Brennan. The fact that they all conspired to create the Russia collusion fraud that was designed to kneecap Donald Trump's presidency is factual and widely known. The next lesson? At least for many Americans, the complete lies and treasonous fraud of the lamestream media in America. Nothing factually evident and well-proven that went against the leftist progressive Marxist agenda saw the light of day on ABC, NBC, NPR, or PBS quote-unquote newscast, or propaganda fest. Only recently have we seen it get worse with those lying corporations covering hugely for Felon Joe, his brother James, and son Hunter. In fact, ABC is most likely going to face legal action over their presidential debate debacle between Trump and Kamala Harris on September 10th of this year, whereby they did everything within their powers to hamper Donald Trump and to make Kamala Harris look favorable. Complete and total election interference, which is a criminal offense. Instead of conducting real neutral, balanced journalism, as would have been the case in prior times, at least to some degree, they all bit on the hook of Hillary, Barry, and Brennan and went wild with the propaganda piece that was the Steele dossier, fully financed by Hillary, a document now well known to be a complete lie and fraud perpetrated among the American populace. For 2 straight years, all the American populace heard, if they tuned into one of the Marxist organization propaganda machines, was that Trump had colluded with Putin and Russia in order to win the 2016 general election. Never mind that he was just the best choice in that election over criminal Hillary. I am at a loss as to why anyone with a brain actually tunes into them after everything exposed under Trump. What else have we learned from Donald Trump? The sheer depths of depravity of the Democratic political party and the extremes to which they will go in order to have their way. Never mind that, quote, democratic means that the citizens get a say in things. Democrats want their forcibly impose their will on America, no matter the cost. First, we watched as they installed Hillary as their candidate in 2016 after Bernie Sanders firmly won the majority of electoral votes in the Democratic primaries that year. Again, never mind the will of the American populace. Democrat Marxists know better. Next, we watched as Democrats faked the 2020 general election in order to install Felon Joe as the president, a move that has led to the most pain and suffering in recent American history. Teaming up with Sundar Pichai, Jack Dorsey, and Mark Zuckerberg, they quashed the free speech of any Americans who disagreed with their corrupt system. Lately, we watched as they installed Kamala Harris as their candidate for the 2024 general election, despite Felon Joe having the majority of electoral votes in the primary elections. Again, the Democratic Party knows best. Not. Would we have known about this level of corruption if it were not for Donald Trump? Perhaps, but most likely not. Next up, while it is fair to say that Americans knew some about the filth and debauchery of the Department of Injustice and FBI in times past, this puppet believes it has been ripped wide open for Americans to plainly see since Trump ascended to the presidency in January of 2017. One of the first things Trump accomplished in 2017 was firing James Comey as director of the FBI. Lamestream media went on about he was treading on dangerous ground since Comey was at the time supposedly investigating Trump for the fake Russia collusion fairy tale. BS, malarkey, lies. Trump knew it was when he heard it. Comey had been deemed to be unable to effectively lead the FBI by the Trump DOJ, and his mishandling of the Hillary Clinton destroyed email server felonies leading up to the 2016 general election was the final straw. Another lesson that opened American public eyes was the filthy, debased Department of Injustice as misran under Merrick Garland at the behest of Felon Joe. Hunter Biden had a laptop chock full of damning evidence that he turned into a computer repair shop in Delaware in 2019 and was subsequently and ill-advisedly turned over to the criminal FBI later that year. Despite it having incriminating evidence on it against Hunter, Joe, and other Biden cartel-made members, Garland's mafia squarely refused to investigate or even give it a glance. Only after much political pressure did Garland and his band of felons finally prosecute Hunter Biden in 2024 for the petty crime of a gun permit he should not have been allowed to obtain if a convicted felon. Never mind the fact that he and his father took millions of dollars in bribes from sworn American enemies such as China, Russia, and the nation of Ukraine. Never mind the fact that Mark Zuckerberg financed election interference efforts late in the night of November 3rd, 2020. Merrick was bought and paid for, and as such, no investigation into these crimes would be conducted on his felonious watch. In fact, it should be noted that Garland has been nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court in March of 2016 by Barry Soetoro, only to be blocked by the U.S. Senate, which refused to rule on it until after the presidential election later that year. As such, it should be noted that Garland holds a huge chip on his shoulder against conservatives and Republicans. That fact alone should get him impeached as head of the Department of Justice, but the Congress has tellingly failed to act. Next on the long list of lessons we learned from Donald Trump, that the current Republican-led House of Representatives is largely a do-nothing organization, especially when it comes to taking much-needed action on criminal matters by other government officials. Take a look for yourself and tell me that this is not correct. Despite Republicans taking control of the House in January of 2023, almost 2 years later, we still have not seen a much-needed impeachment of Joe Biden or of Merrick Garland. 2 speakers of the House into that reign, and Zippo has happened. Lesson number 8 from President Trump. The true extent of the depths of the D.C. swamp. Everyone remembers him promising to drain the swamp during his campaigning leading up to the 2016 presidential election. Well, suffice it to say that no matter how well-intended Trump was in that promise, the very task was daunting, especially after the breadth of the corruption in D.C. establishment that has been exposed since then. What we have seen is that basically every alphabet agency in the U.S. federal government is compromised by the money of the oligarchs and deep state. CIA, corrupt to the extent of completely lying to get Felon Joe installed as U.S. president in 2020. DOJ, so corrupt under Merrick Garland and investigating blatant and plain as day criminal actions of top government officials and their despicable family members is not going to take place. FBI, take a look at Christopher Wray, unfortunately a Trump appointee from his first term, and you will see a former attorney for King and Spalding who has refused to investigate open crimes well known to have been committed by Felon Joe and his cartel. Filthy, to say the least. Next up on the list, a serious detriment that the current Secret Service is to our nation. At Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th of this year, we saw clown antics by the Secret Service that the Three Stooges would be proud of. Thankfully, Donald Trump survived the attempt on his life that day. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle, a DEI appointment, resigned only after much pressure, but she is not the core problem here. September 15th of this year saw yet another attempt on Trump's life. Why would that even be allowed, considering the embarrassment the agency suffered after the first attempt? At this point, it is looking more and more like the Secret Service is an inept arm of the Felon Joe cartel, whose purposeful aim is to get Trump killed before the November election anyway, anywhere, anyhow, all at the behest of the felon-in-chief. Yet another lesson we learned from Donald Trump. The China, Mexico, and other manufacturing slave ship nations around the world will be adversely impacted if our president has the balls to impose much-needed tariffs. After decades of watching our uniparty presidents in Congress sit idly by and watch our nation's jobs and manufacturing technologies get freely given away and or outright stolen with no recourse, it was a breath of fresh air to witness. Another lesson where we saw President Trump act with the intestinal fortitude that was so severely lacking in the uniparty presidents and under-the-table paid-off congressional representatives from years past. When he told the EU nations that have been living off our military tip for almost a century that the time to pay up for NATO is now, wow, to see it finally stated to leftist nations that are left out to destroy us economically was quite nice. Lesson number 12 from the best president this nation has ever seen. No war is plain and simple. Trump was never in bed with the industrial military complex, BlackRock, or any of the usual wage war at all cost suspects. In fact, he was about working things out with potentially caustic world situations using diplomacy if at all possible. That was so nice to see, especially after he saw both Bushes and their war mentalities. Lastly, and probably not all-encompassing in the lessons we have learned from President Trump, the number of stalwart imposter posers within the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell, Mike Pence, Liz Cheney, imposters all. Not interested in the best interest of our nation, Trump exposed them all. In conclusion, I believe we should be grateful Trump entered the presidential race way back in 2015, else we would not know the true depths of the scum and slime at the top of this great nation. Now if we could just clone him for the U.S. president in the future. Good night and sleep well.